everyone, and thank you for joining us on this wonderful sunny evening. You've made a really good choice because you've chosen to be here with Thiago de Moraes, and we're going to be talking today about his wonderful, very funny book, Old Gods, New Tricks. As always, this event is jointly run with Just Imagine and David Fickling Books. And so to begin proceedings this evening, I'm going to invite Liz Cross, who's the publisher at David Fickling, to say a few words about this book.
Thank you, Nikki, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. And I'm really excited to be able to introduce Thiago and his book, Old Gods, New Tricks, to you. This is a particularly exciting book for me because before I met Thiago, or before we ever talked about doing this book together, I was purely and simply a fan of Thiago's. Some of you may know his previous book, one of his previous books, Myth Atlas, which is an amazing illustrated atlas of myths around the world. And my son and I pored over this book for hour after hour. We loved it so much and found it so inspiring and interesting and delightful that when I met Thiago, I was actually a little bit starstruck for the first time. But I was blown away by just his knowledge of myth and his ability to communicate it and to sort of see the stories and communicate the stories lurking in the myths. So when he talked about writing some fiction based on those myths, and we talked about working on that together, I couldn't have been more excited. And I couldn't be more thrilled with what's come out at the end of it. Working with Thiago on this book has been just an absolute joy because, as I say, he knows so much about myth, and he has that glee at sharing those stories and getting everybody else excited about them too. So I'm not going to say much more than that because we've just got an hour, I think, and there's so much for Nikki and Thiago to talk about with us. And I hope that you'll all share that excitement that I feel about this book and feel, as I say, that love of myth, that passion for stories, and that amazing glee coming through. So I'm going to hand you right back to Nikki, who's going to talk to Thiago now.
Well, Liz isn't the only fan. I'm also a fan, Thiago, and I remember meeting you just after your very first book had been published. It was a picture book called The Zoomer's Handbook, and I have looked with interest at all of the books that have come out since then. So it's a delight for me to be able to revisit and make a connection again over this book. So, well, Old Gods and New Tricks. Maybe we could start our conversation this evening by you telling us a little bit about the premise for this story.
Oh, hi. Look, thanks, Nikki. Hi, everyone. Thanks for all the very nice words. I think we should stop here because there's lots of compliments, so it's not going to get better for me. So I think we just give up now. Joking. Look, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for everybody. I know it's the end of term. It's the end of kind of the beginning of summer. There's loads going on. If you're a parent, if you're a teacher, if you're a librarian, if you're anybody, for a kid. So I really appreciate everybody that's here tonight. I started thinking about this book. This is what it looks like. Oh gosh, it's quite a long time ago, and I've always loved mythology and myths from all sorts of different places. I'm Brazilian. I'm actually half French, half Brazilian. I grew up in Brazil. My mother's French, and when I was a child, I had books of myths from all around the world in the house. And I read them. They were not kids' books, they're just books. And I read them all the time. I was fascinated by them. And that fascination, that love hasn't really gone away as I grew. It's still here. So when I started doing this, when I started writing, illustrating books, I knew this is what I wanted to be writing about and talking about. And I've always been fascinated by trickster gods. Most mythologies have trickster gods, that the gods that kind of, don't fit the rules of the pantheon, don't fit the rules of kind of the way that the kind of the gods that they're in charge of everything. And what they really do that's interesting to me, and sometimes they can be classified as downright evil, sometimes they're quite cheeky, and everything in between. And what I've always found very fascinating was the fact that they were creators. They change things. Trickster gods bring change. They bring all sorts of new things into the world, and they do it with humor, and they do it in a way that kind of is whimsical. So I've always been fascinated by those. And one day, I was actually in lockdown, waiting to park somewhere to go and walk in the wood, and my wife said to me, "Oh, you should write a book about tricksters. You know, you like them so much." And I went, "Yeah, thanks," and didn't think about it twice. And then after that, I started thinking about it more and more. The idea won't leave my head, and this is where the book comes from. And as I was saying, tricksters change the world. In a lot of myths, they bring fire to the people. You know, Prometheus or Maui stole fire from the gods. You know, Maui brought the islands from the sea, fished the islands from the sea, and gave them. He slowed the sun down so people would have a longer day. They change things, sometimes they benefit humanity, and they impact the way humanity lives in a lot of these mythologies. And I thought, would it be quite interesting if a big change happened to humanity and the tricksters had to come and help put that to rights? And that's what the story of the book comes. It's about a girl, who's like 12, 13. I don't say in the book, I'm not sure myself, but she's around that age. And she's half Brazilian, like me, half Norwegian, unlike me. She's also obsessed with gods, but unlike me when I was 13, she's a real troublemaker. I wasn't. I was like a swot, and I was very quiet and polite at school. But she's not. She's always playing pranks and doing all sorts of things. And the story starts with her being told off by the headmaster with her family. She's for doing pranks at school, and all the lights go off. And they think the lights have gone off at school, but it turns out they've also gone off in the block, in the town, in the country, and in the whole world. And slowly they realize, she and her family realize that there's no electricity anywhere, and it starts going away from even batteries and things that generate electricity. Trixie then, because she's obsessed with mythology and the kid, works out that the gods must have stolen the electricity because they want to be worshipped again. And she tells her parents. They don't believe her because they wouldn't. And she then decides that what she's going to do is kind of enlist the help of tricksters that she's known from her books and the stories that she loves to try to steal the electricity back from the gods. So that's what's happened in the book. It's a girl that has always believed in these stories, has always been fascinated with them, stepping from our world into that world and having an adventure there with a whole bunch of kind of quite dangerous and wild kind of companions.
Trixie's the perfect name for her because she's sort of a trickster herself, really, isn't she? And you choose 5 main trickster gods for her to encounter. There's actually a 6th one as well who comes along a little bit later. But I want to explore a little bit about why you chose those 5, because just about every religion, mythology has its tricksters. We could have had a Hindu, we could have had Krishna in there, but you chose 5. So tell us a little bit about the gods that appear.
Yeah, so there's 5. So there's Ishu, who's the Yoruba trickster. So in Brazil, there's a huge presence of there's a huge African diaspora, obviously, because enslaved people were taken there from 1500s onwards, and they brought their religion and their culture with them, and amazingly has survived, even though all sorts of horrors were kind of acted upon them. And a very strong presence of Yoruba religion in Brazil, Afro-Brazilian religion. Obviously, during those 500 years, it has, not just in Brazil, in a lot of Latin America, it has evolved and changed, branched out from the traditional Yoruba beliefs in Western Africa, but it still has loads of kind of similarities. So Eshu is the god of crossroads, the god of beginnings, the god of a whole bunch of other things. And he's a very important god in the Yoruba pantheon, and he creates a lot of change. He helps the Oshala and Olum, which are the main gods, and he does all sorts of things. So he's the first god. He's the first god that Trixie kind of enlists. Then we have Loki, the Norse trickster, who is super famous because there's countless books about him. He's in Marvel comics, and he's like, and he's once again, unlike Eshu, I mean, they all have different aspects, and that's one thing I like about tricksters. They're not monolithic in their behavior and their belief and in their kind of in their personalities. A lot of gods represent one thing. This is the god of justice, and he's just all the time. This is the goddess of love, and she's always flirting. This is the god of the hunt, and he's always after stuff. These are not. These are complex beings, that have more than one aspect, more than one behavior, etc., etc. So Loki, it can be in some stories. Loki is cheeky and fun, and some he kills Balder, for instance, which is a very important god, for no reason, just for kicks. So there's Loki. There's number two. And number three is Maui, which once again became very famous recently for my age, with the Disney film. But Maui is like a demigod for some Polynesian and Pacifica people. He's a god for some others. He's one of these gods that features in the mythologies of and beliefs of all sorts of different cultures. And he's a great creator and transformer and changer of things. The fourth is Sun Wukong. He's called the Monkey King. He's the Sun Wukong from this book is from the Journey. He comes from Journey to the West, which is a classic Chinese text, but he's also known as Hanuman in China. In India, he's in the Ramayana because he's a very famous character, and he's a crazy fun guy. And then the last one is Huehuecoyotl, which I'm probably pronouncing in a terrible way because my Aztec is not great. And he's the old coyote. So he's an Aztec god, and he's the Aztec god of drinking and sex. There's also of other things, and he's also kind of got all sorts of different aspects. And I chose them for a few reasons. I chose them because I was familiar with them. There's the first thing, was kind of, I liked them. The main reason is this: I liked them, and I thought they would be fun to spend time with. And if you're a writer, you spend a lot of time with the characters you're writing about, and you have to enjoy spending the time with them. And I thought they would be great. The other thing, I also thought they would complement each other quite well. They all had different characteristics. One is, Maui can be quite brash and quite impulsive. He's very brave. Loki is very kind of calculating, conniving, but he can be quite cowardly as well. So I thought all of them together would be a motley crew that would be really interesting to spend time with.
They are a fantastic ensemble, and it does lead for some great humour, which I'm sure we're going to hear in a little while. One of the things that strikes me is that some of the mythologies that you draw on, we treat them as story because they're from the kind of distant past, and perhaps they're not part of people's everyday beliefs anymore. But there is some consideration to be had where a religion might still be a living religion. And I know that you're very cognizant of that. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts in how you approach that in this book.
Well, look, it's a great question. The question, myth is part of religion. Religion is a whole bunch of things. Is ritual, is liturgy, is, the institution behind it, its practitioners, its believers, etc., etc. Mythos in Greek is just stories. So those are the stories that are part of a religion, and they sometimes are very strong in your religious experience, and sometimes they can be quite removed from your religious experience. It depends on the religion, depends on the person, depends on how they choose to practice it. And I think some, you put it very well, some religions aren't practiced anymore. So, if you look at kind of Norse, the ancient Norse religions that as the Vikings practiced it, might have been revived by paganism now, but it hasn't been, widely practiced anymore. But it's still part of the cultural identity of a whole bunch of people. But the stories that have remained have been kind of rendered slightly void of their religious significance. We still respect them and kind of, but they don't have that weight to the people that kind of have a relationship with them, they're part of their culture. And then other religions, I was talking about the Yoruba religions, the Yoruban-derived religions in South America. They are living religions that have practitioners and believers everywhere. And I think when you write about something like that, you have to do it with the utmost amount of respect and the permission and a lot of research as well. So, when I wrote Myth Atlas, which is the book that Liz was referencing earlier, there's a whole chapter on Yoruba belief there, Yoruba mythology and their worldview. And I not only did loads of research, but also spoke to Yoruba practitioners in Brazil, or candomblé practitioners they're called. We spoke to professors here, not only to make sure that things were right, but also to make sure that the way we're talking about it was respectful, and the way we're talking about it was true to the spirit of the myth. Now, in the book, I'm not writing about religion. I'm writing a story with characters based on mythology. And in this case, so I don't want to deviate from anything. I don't want to create characters that are at odds with what they might have been in the canon of a certain culture, but I'm also not replicating exactly their steps on the stories as they've been told. So that is the difference for me. You know, you have loads of books where you have characters that are, you know, the character Loki in Marvel Comics is not the god Loki, he's a character based on the god. So I think that's the, and I think you can take more liberties with Loki than you can with Ishu, because there are people, the relationship, every single part of the relationship that people have with Loki will be different from the relationship that people have with Ishu. We still a god that is respected, you know, worshipped, and whose presence has a very strong influence in people's cultural identity and sense of self-belief.
I will just say to the audience, there's going to be opportunity for you to participate as we go through. Please do feel that you can enter any thoughts, comments in the chat, and I'll also be opening a Q&A. As we go through the event this evening, Thiago's also going to do some live drawing, and I know that he'd like your assistance for that. So just get ready with your fingers poised. Just a couple more questions, and we're going to look at some of the imagery and also hear you read from the book. But I wanted to say that one of the things that I really appreciated about this story was the dynamic. So these five gods, these tricksters that you've chosen, have this fantastic dynamic between them, but also the dynamic between Trixie and the gods. And it seemed to me that there's a lot of play there around who's the parent and who's the child. The gods can be both childlike and parent-like, but Trixie also is both parent-like and childlike at the same time. And I really enjoyed that.
Well, that's a really good observation. I generally had never thought about that, but I think, you know, because these are playful characters, I think a lot of the kind of playfulness and a bit the sense of kind of wonder comes from looking at the world as a kid, you know, and that's another thing that's fascinating about it is looking at something going, oh, it's this way, but why is it this way? Why is this like this? Why can't it be the other way? And I think sometimes that takes you to places that are very wise and very kind of revelatory, and sometimes it takes us to a very kind of, you know, kind of juvenile place sometimes, and that's fun to be, and it's interesting both. And I hadn't thought about it, but I also think they're kind of all individualists, you know, they're all characters, including Trixie. They like doing things their own way, and I think part of the journey that they all go through is learning that actually, if they're all going to survive and they're all going to achieve something that they maybe thought wasn't important to begin with, but they realize is vital eventually, they're going to have to learn how to look after each other. And I think that that's you know, that's what changes in her from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. But that's also what changes in the gods. And you know, gods are meant to be immutable in a way. But that's the fun of writing book, is that, you know, you can move things around a little bit.
Do you know, I think time has come perhaps to hear a reading, because you're going to introduce one of these gods to us through an episode of the story.
Yes. So I'm gonna read a very short. I mean, nothing I say short, so I apologize. But I'm going to be a very short excerpt, and I think it's good because we've been talking about very serious things. I think, and actually, I think I don't want anybody to have the impression the book is very serious. The book is not serious at all. Well, it is serious, but it's got loads of humor, hopefully. So this is Trixie's out recruiting tricksters, and she has arrived at Sunflower Mountain, which is where Sun Wukong, the Monkey King of Chinese myth, lives. And she's there with her pet ferret called Yogi, after Jormungandr, the kind of serpent from the world serpent from Norse myth. And she had to climb a whole mountain, which she doesn't like climbing, she's afraid of heights. And she has to go through a waterfall. She went to the waterfall, and they just arrived at a valley. Wow, she said to Yogi as he climbed onto her shoulder. That cave wasn't much fun, but this place is not bad at all. All we have to do now is find Monkey. That won't be hard, said a voice above her. Trixie looked up and saw a small, blue-faced monkey climbing down to the grass next to her. He curtsied to her with an elaborate flourish. "Here I am, monkey." "Oh," said Trixie. "Good to meet you. I thought you might have been harder to find." "No, no, 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 no," said the little monkey, waving his arms. "It's very easy to find monkeys around here. How can I help you?" "I'm on a quest to steal something from the gods, and I need help," explained Trixie. "Great, I love stealing stuff," beamed the monkey. "I can go with you." "Don't you want to know more before agreeing to come?" said Trixie, raising an eyebrow. The little monkey's brow knitted. He put one hand on his chin, straining to think of something to ask. Eventually his face relaxed, and he opened up in a big smile. "Will there be snacks?" he asked, clearly proud of having thought of such an important question. Probably, the girl replied. "We're not exactly swimming in snacks at this particular point in time, but I'm sure once we get what we're looking for, there'll be plenty." "Excellent," the small furry creature beamed. "Let's get started." "Don't you want me to tell you what we're stealing?" asked Trixie. The monkey stared at her blankly for a moment. Then his grin returned. "Nah, let's just go." "Can I come too?" said another voice. Trixie turned and saw a large gibbon standing by her shoulder. Thanks, but not really," she said. "I only need monkey." "But I am monkey," said the bigger creature. "I thought he was monkey," said Trixie, pointing at the little one. "I am," said the little blue-faced monkey. "So am I," shouted another voice from above. "And me, and me." Smiling furry figures were descending from the vines and landing all around Trixie. "I am monkey!" yelled a very small, very fat ball of yellow fur, crashing to the girl and sending her sprawling into the floor. Trixie sat up, gently pushing the stunning cannonballing monkey to one side, and looked around. The top of the hill where she lay was now covered by a huge crowd of monkeys, some taller than her, others barely bigger than Yorkie. They were all talking at the same time, slapping their chests, waving their arms and jumping. "Wait," she shouted. "I get it. You are all monkeys. That's great. But I'm only looking for the monkey, Sun Wukong. Do you know where he is?" "He's here," said someone in the crowd. "Yup, definitely here somewhere," said another. "Can't miss him, really," said a third, before all the other monkeys began to shout answers at the top of their voices. "Can you be quiet for a moment?" asked Trixie, feeling surprised, and the crowd actually began to quiet down. She filled her chest and shouted in her most serious voice, "Sun Wukong, Monkey King, step towards me, please." The monkeys ignored her completely. "What's the fun in that?" asked the little monkey by her feet. "You're going to have to find him," said the big gibbon, winking. "Maybe it really is me." Trixie took a deep breath, sighed, and stepped into the mass of giggling monkeys. Look, and this is what it looks like. This is the book. Oh, I can't do this properly. And this is Trixie there, slightly lost in front of all the giggling monkeys. So that's a little bit of the book. Hopefully can give you an idea of what's going on.
I'm so glad you showed that illustration. I absolutely love that picture. And it's quite a good segue into us looking at the illustration in the book, because so far we've talked about story and we've talked about the tricksters, but we haven't really talked about the illustration. So I'm just going to put some slides on and then invite you to tell us a little bit about them and talk through them.
Great. So so this is at the very end of the book, right? Actually, and that's kind of Shu and Trixie looking at the sky. And I think one thing that's kind of interesting about being an author and illustrator is that I have a certain relationship with words and pictures. So a lot of the time people ask me, what comes first? And actually the story always comes first. I always think about the plot first and the characters. And that means that a lot of the time you write first. But, in this particular case, I wrote a plot. Liz and I and Maggie, who works with Liz, spent a lot of time thinking about the plot to get the plot to the right place. And then I sat down and I drew loads of little kind of sketches. You can see them behind me here. Can you see them kind of over my right shoulder? It might be on the left to everybody else, but they're back here. And I drew loads of those, not necessarily because I wanted them to be in the story, but because I thought it would be nice to look at something as I write. It was as simple as that. But some of them, and I think you might have some of them there as the little thumbnails. I don't know if you have the next one. So some of them actually, you can see the one that we've just seen there at the bottom right. I hadn't really written that scene into the story, but I liked the drawing. I thought actually I really want to have a moment where it's just the two of them looking at this magical sky and talking to each other. So a lot of the time, these little visual ideas insert themselves in the story without me knowing, and not necessarily in the plot, but in the actual narrative in the way I'm telling things. And you know, most of those bits here are not in the story. She's not climbing down a big snake. Anubis is not holding her on a set of scales, and she's not on top of a whole bunch of clouds. But some other are. So if you go to if you can please go to the next page. Once again here, I really wanted to have her diving with Maui, but there was no place in the story for that to happen. So I like that drawing, but it never happened. But on the top right, you can see Loki, and she's looking up at Loki, and he's surrounded by flames. You know, you know, a lot of kind of traditions have him as the god of fire, wildfire. So I wanted him to have fiery hair and be in his elements, and that's exactly, you know, the little drawing is about this size. You can once again you can see behind me. It's like that's an A4 page. That ended up being one of the illustrations in the book. So I like kind of, I have the luxury and the privilege of being able to kind of imagine some things as visually as well as with words, and be able to kind of move things between one space and another. And I really enjoy that. It keeps things exciting for me.
Can I just ask you about working in black and white? Because you don't always work in black and white. Is this quite new for you, or is it something that you've done before?
Well, actually, the only thing for my whole life before I became this, I worked as a commercial illustrator and everything. If I could, I would only work in black and white. So I draw, everything I draw is black and white, and sometimes I color it. And you know, a whole bunch of market necessities will say that, you know, if you want to have popular commercial books, they need to be colorful because people buy colorful books. So I color them. I like color. I think it's a beautiful thing, but I like drawing black and white. And what I like about it is because it helps you think. It helps me think in terms of composition, you know. And I like playing composition, which figures are occupying which spaces in the page, and negative space. So I love black and white. I think you know, Tove Jansson is one of my favorite illustrators. I think, you know, that there's a guy called Sampé, he's a French cartoonist. I love him. You know, Gory, all those people. I've since I was a very little kid. Most of the time, I only drew with a black pen, not even a pencil. And that's kind of, so these are sketches. They're not, you know, I don't draw with a pencil. I just draw them with ink, pen and ink, and I that's how my brain works.
So this is pen and ink. It's not done on a tablet. It's actually with.
No, I draw on paper with ink, with an ink brush most of the time, and then I scan it. If I have to color it, then I'll color it digitally because it's quicker. But for this, everything was done by hand. I mean, to be fair, when you're doing it on a computer, you're doing it by hand as well. It's the same thing. But this was done with ink and paper, yes.
So it's just interesting. You've mentioned some of the artists, the illustrators who also have a preference for working in black and white. But what strikes me about all of their work is just how different it is and how different affordances of working in black and white seem to have appealed to them. So for some, it seems to be about a dynamic line, and you know, your work to me, and I'm only a lay person, I don't know anything about art, but a strong sense of pattern and the importance of negative space seem to be things that come out of the page at me.
Well, look, I'm a lay person too, right? It's not because I do it, I don't understand anything about it. But yeah, it is. But look, I think you're right how you write, and you draw how you draw, right? So if I could draw like Gory or Tommy Ungara or Tove Jansson, I would love it. But I draw like me, you know. I'm sure that at some point in my life I tried drawing. That's how you learn, you know. Try drawing like that person, Try writing like that person. I'm no Steinbeck, you know, or Thomas Pynchon or any of those guys, but I like reading them and I can appreciate the prose. And I think you kind of get that stuff gets in you in some way or another. It's like food, you know. If you only eat McDonald's every day, like Morgan Spurlock in that documentary, you end up a certain way. On the other hand, if you only eat lettuce every day, you also end up another way. But I think, you know, you can get a little bit of everything, and what comes out is a little bit of you and a little bit of them. But no, we're all very different. And, you know, I think even, you know, if you are an illustrator, you can find two people whose style is very similar, or that people might think are very similar, like Quentin Blake and Tony Ross. And I can see a million things there. I would be, you know, I think we'd all be able to go on by describing them, they have the same style, but they're completely different artists. So I love all that stuff, and I think all of the time, in the past, people drew in black and white out of necessity because you would reproduce things in one color. You wouldn't reproduce them; it would be too expensive to do it in 4 colors. But for me, it was a joy to be able to do this book with only black and white. And actually, there's only one illustration per chapter in the book because I thought that would be great to spend as much time. A lot of the time when you're drawing fiction, you draw a lot. My previous fiction book had 250 pages and illustration per page. And that was great. It was super fun. But then when you have one illustration per chapter, you can put a lot more into it. And it's more like drawing a picture book when you have 20-something illustrations. And each one, you took the care, you took the time. Not that you don't when you're drawing fast, but more here. And actually, you have to synthesize the narrative and the storytelling in the images in a much more concerted way.
I'm just going to open the Q&A, so if anybody does want to put a question in, they can start putting those through. So those of you that are listening at the moment, if you do want to add a question, please do, and we'll feed those through the rest of the event here. Just one last question before we leave this set of images, your black and white pictures, Thiago. In fact, there was another one for people to have a look at here. And that is, in representing these trickster gods from different cultural backgrounds, you still needed something that was cohesive for the illustration. I wondered whether you did draw on any cultural references or whether you decided not to do that with the illustration.
Well, no, I did. As I said, I wrote a large nonfiction, illustrated a large nonfiction book with mythological retellings from around the world, and I had to research. I had textual research to do, but I also had visual research to do. So I had to kind of when it comes, Yoruba, what do they look like? What do people look like? What would the gods wear? What do the people wear at a certain point in time? And it was the same for everything. So I researched the cultures and I researched how those cultures represent their gods themselves. And then I drew elements from that into, Maoist tattoos or the kind of the embroidery on Loki's, the rune embroidery on Loki's robe, or Ishu's cowrie shells, which, are very prominent in Yoruba kind of legend. I looked at lots of kind of Aztecs codices and things to look at Huehuecoyotl. But then I put that through my style in terms of my line. So, I didn't draw Coyote like he would have been drawn on a bas-relief in Mexico City in a temple. I drew it like I would have drawn it, but with the same features, same characteristics. And if he's got earrings with feathers, he has earrings with feathers. If he's got like a big round thing around a big kind of waistband, he's got one of those. But I just drew that in my style.
Well,
like most illustrators would.
We've got some questions coming through and also some comments. So Kelly says that the drawings are amazing and how nice to hear that they're done in pen and ink. Digital tools are good, she says, but drawings are more personal. Let's have a look here. We've got a question. I'll put it on the screen. There we are, Thiago. Do you want to answer? Can you see the question? No, you can't because I haven't sent it to the stream. That would help.
No. So there you go. Oh, right, there you go. So how long did it take me to write the book? So I don't know how much people know. If you do a job, you assume everybody kind of knows what the job is like. But I don't know if everybody knows how it works. But things like this, if you want to get a book made, you usually have to send it to a publisher, unless you're doing it yourself. And this is what I did. And I was lucky enough to be able to do it with Liz, who I have met before and always wanted to work with. She's a brilliant editor and she's lovely. So I always wanted to work with her. And I had an idea for the book, wrote like a little, 9-page, this is what the story was going to be, sent it to her. And then it takes quite a long time for people to actually, choose to do the book. So there were a few months of that. And then it took me about 3 months to write the whole book from top to bottom. And then I think we spent another 3 months editing it, which is the most important bit. Because, the reason why it's great to work with editors is nothing's better than having somebody that is intelligent, wise, and kind of committed, helping you make your story better. And actually, Liz and Maggie were amazing. The book would not be a tenth of what it is if they hadn't done what they did. So that was another 3 months. So if we think that other jobs or school can be annoying because you have to do something once or twice, the draft that got published for this, I think, is draft 17. But it's a joy. It sounds like the ridiculous thing. So it was 6 months sort of from beginning to the end of writing, and then I probably had a couple of months of illustrating, but not doing it all day every day, because there's only 20 illustrations in the book. Then what I was doing is actually kind of taking my time with them. So all in all, it took around 7 months from the moment I sat down to write it to the moment where I went, okay, you guys have everything, and I'm not going to touch this anymore.
Okay.
Though I might try, but they'll let me.
We're going to another couple of questions. I don't know if everybody's found the Q&A. I can see things coming up in the chat. I will take them from the chat, but if you find the Q&A, it's quite good to leave the questions in there so that they can come up on the screen. I want to say hello to Johnny Walker and also his students who are joining us from around the world, which is amazing because I believe they've been studying tricksters. And there's a question here. I don't know if this is one of Johnny's students or not, but it's from Daniela, and she says, "Hi, Thiago. My son would like to know who your inspiration was for Trixie."
Whoa, look. I was telling you guys at the beginning that I'm half French, half Brazilian. I grew up in Brazil. And I really wanted to write about Afro-Brazilian myths. So I thought that she had to have a connection to that. And I thought, she can't really be half French, half Brazilian, because that's too much like me, and she's not like me at all. So half of it was me, my childhood, and the fact that I grew up with parents from different cultures and influences from different cultures, and then the other half is my daughter. I have a 7-year-old daughter called Billy, and she's very cheeky, and she likes playing pranks. This Saturday, she bought a fake poo and put it on the floor of the house, and thought it was hilarious. We didn't know she had found this fake poo at the school fair. She actually, and we didn't think it was that funny, but it was actually quite funny. So it's a combination of kind of my reality growing up, but the personality of my daughter. But a little bit of it is also just her. I thought, you think I'm going to have to create a character that's going to be able to lead, or at least kind of follow a whole bunch of, immortal gods that are really tricky, quite tough, and only out for themselves. She has to have certain characteristics. So she's a combination of all those things.
And she's got cool parents because they're anthropologists. I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, Johnny's got a question here. He says, "Thanks for sharing your book. What he wants to know is, do you think we can take any life lessons from tricksters?"
Oh, definitely, right. And I think that's one of the reasons why myths exist, is that some of them are about morality, but some of them are just about kind of behavior and the way you interact with the world. So I think of any myth, any legend, any story gives you, lessons in that sense. But I think particularly from tricksters, I go back to what I was saying at the beginning, where they are forces for change and non-conformism. They are often revolutionaries. They're often people that, characters that look at the status quo. They look at what's the way the world is and go, it could be a different way. Maui slows the sun down because the days are too quick. That's and that benefits everybody. Maybe he did it to help benefit everybody. Maybe he just want to see if he wanted to do it, but he still did it. So I think it. And the other thing that I think is fantastic about tricksters is that they solve things in ways that are not the way that everybody solves things. That they do things in ways that not everybody does things. And I think we especially for a young person, and you're in school, there's a huge pressure to behave like your peers and to follow on the tracks everybody follows. And actually, there's nothing wrong with that. When we live in society, you have to be civil and you have to respect everybody's boundaries. But there is space for everybody to be who they are and to find their own way of doing things. And I think that to me is the greatest lesson, is that there's kind of And the last one to me is, I love those. These are the gods that take themselves the least seriously. Some of them. So I think that's another lesson in life. If you take yourself too seriously, it's not that fun to be around. You're not that fun to be around. You're not having a lot of fun. And they, at least in my head, don't take themselves so seriously. They have a sense of humor about the world, about themselves. So these are, and there are many other lessons, but these are the ones I took myself, and I might be completely wrong. These are my subjective kind of relationships with these guys.
Fantastic. I will take more audience questions in a little while, so do keep adding them in there. But one of the things that, if anybody has seen this book on the bookshelves in the bookshops, please make sure you turn it face out, because it's an amazing front cover. And it stands out because it's quite different. It's very limited in its colour palette. And I wondered whether you'd take us through the story, if you like, of how the book jacket design came up. And we do have some images to look at here.
Well, great. I'm going to try to do quite quickly, because I think I've been talking for so long that I'm just boring everyone. But so look, I mean, once again, I don't know how much people know about publishing, but I didn't know this before I worked in this industry. So, of all the things that people are going to have a really strong opinion on in a publishing house about your book, the cover and the title, those are the two most important things. And actually, that's right, because that's most cases, be it online, be it in a bookshop, that's what people are going to face, they're going to encounter, and you need to communicate as much as possible about not just the content of the book, but the tone of the book. Is it funny? Is it sad? Is it scary? Anyway, so I like drawing, you guys know by now that I like drawing lots of little doodles, so I did loads of little doodles with the idea that was like, we wanted to show Trixie and the gods, or a god. And once again, going back to that thing that I was saying about composition, just try to find a really kind of strong way to place them. And at the beginning, the book was just going to be called Tricks. But both Liz and Maggie quite rightly pointed out that doesn't tell you very much about what's inside. So they actually came up with Old Gods and Tricks. There's no My Idea. It's a brilliant title. And they came up with it. So I'm very, very grateful to them for that. So first I did all these little things. And then actually we worked out that having Trixie and a few of the gods was the right way to go. So then from there, I did some other roughs really quickly. Once again, these are not finished anything. These are like, 10 minutes by hand and then some color or the computer behind it. And my original idea was, is either her standing amongst the gods like that, or we could use their faces, which is the next one. And I quite like this one because I thought it was quite unusual, but then it's also a book that you want kids to look at and go, I really want to read this book. And parents to go, oh, that feels like a book that my kid wants to read. And I think we felt this was maybe a little bit esoteric. It was a little bit kind of the idea of what happens inside the book. You kind of go, there's some fun characters, but what are they doing? So then we spent quite a lot of time, and there were like loads of versions. But we thought actually she should be active, and the gods should be around her, and should be some lightning because she's stealing electricity back from the gods. So we ended up with those two on the left here, or on the right. I still can't understand who sees what, but the two that look very similar, with her in the middle and the lightning and everything. But I was still, as we were having these ideas, every time I'd send something back to Liz and Maggie, I'd go, oh, maybe it's the big head of issue. It's written, I had loads of ideas. I just want to get them out of my system. But we decided that the one in the middle, which is Trixie holding a shard of something, which I'm not going to describe to spoil the story, with the lightning coming out of it, the gods around her, was the best idea for the cover. I was quite keen to have as few colors as possible, because I thought, going back to the conversation we had earlier, that would be a really interesting thing. Most kids' books have really colorful illustrations, lots of grades, and so I thought, actually, maybe if you don't have that, it says something about the intention behind the book. And then Alison, who's the brilliant art director at David Vickman Books, and Liz and Maggie just worked a bit to get to what we have now. And the first thing I got to where I was happy is the next image, which is very close to the real cover, which is the one on the left. But I didn't have any kind of, the gods were almost like hidden in the landscape. And I thought that was really cool. You can barely see them, and she's like, and you have to really look for them. And then everybody pointed out, so actually, Manny, it's a cover. you sort of need to see them. So then I drew all these yellow highlights and I pushed them forwards a little bit more. And we had the lightning connecting the kind of the title and the thing in her hand. And we got to the space. So that is like, once again, like the 20th version of 20th idea. And that's the one that came out, we ended up with. And I'm happy that, all the brilliant people that had all these points of view actually had those points of view. So I'm really happy with how it came out.
Absolutely fascinating, just to get that lightning tour, to see how ideas evolve. Well, Thiago, I think we really want some live drawing now, and I think we're going to need the help of the audience for this. So I really hope that you're going to join in. What is it that you want them to do, Thiago?
So, because we're talking about mythology, in the book there are lots of gods, but there's also lots of monsters, and mythology, every mythology has a series of monsters. And actually, if you look at kind of Greek mythology, for instance, if you look at a griffin, is the head of a falcon or a hawk, the body of a lion. If it's a hippogriff, it's got like the kind of the hind part of a horse, or a minotaur is a guy, top half is a bull. They're all mixtures of animals. They seem to be, So a game that I love playing when I go to schools, when I go to libraries, or when I do it with my own kids is kind of, let's create a new mythological monster. And the easiest way to do it is to just suggest different body parts. And people try to suggest weird things because they try to catch me out. And I've now drawn so many of these that I think I'm kind of quite schooled. So what I would like you guys to do is to suggest, different body parts. And I'm going to draw it live for you guys. So I'm going to disappear from the screen for a second. You're going to see a big white screen. And then I would like some audio help. So Nikki, if you can actually just tell me, choose one. And hopefully, we'll come up with a really scary, or maybe some quite funny new mythological monster. We can give it a name as well. So I'm going to share my drawing screen, and I'll see you guys in 1 second. So I just want confirmation. Can everybody see my big white screen? Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Can I just check that you can hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Brilliant.
So
Okay.
let's start with the head. So who wants to suggest the head? What sort of head should our monster have? Could be anything.
Yeah. Everybody, if you'd like to put that in the chat, we've got lots of yeses. People can hear what we're saying. So let's have some suggestions. What would you like? What kind of head would you like Thiago to draw? Okay, while we're waiting, they're thinking. Shall I just give you a head to get things going?
Yeah, let's do that.
Oh no, a big head, an armadillo, a big armadillo.
An armadillo. Oh, that's a tricky one. Okay, let's see if I can do an armadillo. So they have like kind of pointy noses like this, and they have kind of these kind of pointy ears with little furry bits. Now, it could be an angry armadillo, or it could be a cheery armadillo. Because we're trying to make it into a monster, I think we should make it a little bit angry. So what I'm going to do, if you want to draw somebody, a character being angry, you do eyes like this. You go down and up again. And then you do eyebrows the same. So up and down like this. So they look really angry. And because he's angry, he's going to have some sort of gritted teeth. So he's got gritted teeth. And then because he's an armadillo, he's going to have a little bit of plate armor here on his neck. But I'm not going to draw the rest of him because we have to have the body now. And without the body, I don't really know where the neck's going to go. So what we need next is a body. So the head of an armadillo, what's the body going to be? Remember, it could be anything. It doesn't need to be a mammal. It can be an insect. It can be anything.
Okay, so anybody want to put some body parts, some animals for bodies? If not, I'll take one that's already been suggested. How about a walrus?
A walrus, very good. So I'm going to do a big flompy walrus, but I'm going to leave some space for the arms, and I'm going to leave some space for the legs. So I'm going to put a little bit of on the chest here. So, and I'm going to draw a little bit of a belly there. But I'm going to leave some space open here on the side for the arms. I'm going to leave some space for the legs. and maybe a tail. So let's suggest some arms. What could the arms be like?
So anybody like to suggest some arms? Actually, there's a good suggestion here from Nicola already. I don't think I've taken one of her suggestions. How about a squid?
Oh, very good. So I'm going to draw some two big tentacles here. Whoa, he's looking quite peculiar already. And look, you can draw some suckers. They're really easy to draw. You just draw like this kind of looping circles. So we have one big squiddy bit there and another there. It's going to be very difficult for him to use any cutlery, I think. But, maybe the suckers can make up for it. Okay, so we've got the head of an armadillo, the body of a walrus, the arms of a squid. What about the legs? We need some legs. Who's going to give me some legs?
Okay, I'm with Johnny. He says he's going to have nightmares tonight. I am as well. Can we have some suggestions for legs in here, please? Who's going to add
Meanwhile,
some legs?
I'm going to draw some scales.
I'm just waiting for some ideas.
Looks a little bit armadillo-y.
Oh, right. So we have got fin. Somebody wants fins, and Carol would like the legs of a centipede.
Okay, well, I think we can have some fins here, but next to the tail. But I think if he's got squid arms and a fin, it'll be pretty hard. So I think we should go with the centipede. So I'm going to draw lots of little bits here. It's a very peculiar creature. And I'm going to draw, lots of legs. I think maybe we can have even a few more legs.
We're counting. There's got to be 100,
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to take that. You guys are going to just have to trust me. Yeah. Okay. And now we need a tail. I know he's got a little tail with fins there, but what's going to be the end of that? It could be a scorpion tail. It could be a cat tail. It could be anything. So what sort of tail are we going to have?
I'm just waiting for people to add some suggestions. What kind of tail are we going to give our monster? Just waiting for them to come through. The ideas. Bear with us 1 minute. Liz has said, I'll let you choose. You can have a lemur, a peacock, or a stegosaurus.
I think if we wanted to look really weird, let's go for a peacock. Because, it could not be more incongruous. So peacocks have like a big round thing, blue thing in the middle of their tails that looks a bit like an eye, don't they? And they also have different sort of feathers. So they have these feathers with the round things on top, but they've also got like these kind of feathers that look a bit like ferns, I always thought, at the end. So I'm going to draw that. Now, I think he's going to have mobility issues, quite frankly. So I wonder if you should give him or her some wings. I think he might help.
We had wing suggestions earlier. Somebody wanted a butterfly.
Right. Okay, well, let's do that. I mean, any wings are wings, so I'm going to have some massive butterfly wings there. And butterfly wings are quite easy to draw. They're just like, hearts that you don't really draw the point of. Some butterfly wings. And now, I think, so we've got an armadillo head, the body of a walrus, the arms of a squid, fins, the legs of a centipede, the tail of a peacock, and butterfly wings. I think we should have a name. And I tell you what, let's have a couple of names, and then we can maybe choose from a couple of names, or however many names you want to send us.
This is a difficult one, everybody. So Thiago would like you to name this monster. I know you can do it. So let's have a couple of names, and we can choose one from your suggestions. I'm thinking about it. That's a tough one.
Well, I mean, most times when I do monsters, people call them either Jeff or Bob.
Oh, I don't believe it. Kelly's called it Jeff. Seriously.
Oh, there you go. It's a very popular
name.
It's a very popular Jeff. I think it's a great name for a monster,
Okay. But we've got to have another suggestion as well, just in case people don't like Jeff. Anyway, I think it's female, but you could have a female Jeff, I guess.
Yeah, she could be Jeffette or
Okay,
Jeffina.
so we've got two other suggestions. We've got the Squiramo Butterfin Piece Centirus, I think. We've got
That's
a
very
Ferrum,
good.
or we've got a Centifly.
I think I shall call it a Sentifly because it's the only one I can probably spell from those two. So this is the mighty Sentifly. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to
Fabulous.
stop sharing this now. That was a good one, guys. I think it's one of the most kind of peculiar ones that I've been asked to make. And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to return.
Fabulous. I did so enjoy that. I'm in awe actually of how closely you must have observed so many animals, because if I was asked to draw an aardvark, I'd be hard pressed to even think what its snout is like, and the detail of the peacock feathers. So really good. Big round of applause for you. We've got some claps coming up in the chat as well. I'm just going to ask if anybody has any final questions, because we're coming towards the end of our time. My goodness me, it's flown past. And I know that to end our session this evening, you're going to read us out with another funny piece. But in case anybody has any last questions, I do want them to have the opportunity to ask them. And if not, we'll probably go to you, Thiago. We'll ask you to tell us a little bit about what you're going to read to finish off. And then when you finish, that will be the end of the event. So I would like to thank everybody for coming along on this sunny evening. It was, my evening's been fantastic. So I thank you very much. Thiago, lovely to have an insight into your work, and I hope lots of people are going to pick this book up and read it. And thank you to Liz Fraser and David Fickling as well. So over to you.
Well, look, thanks, Nikki. It's brilliant to chat to you, and thanks everybody, and thanks Liz for the brilliant introduction. It's just been a lovely. Sometimes books come out and they go into the world, and all that happens is the book goes out into the world. It's lovely to be able to talk about it. And so thank everybody that took some time off your Monday evening to come out. So what I'm going to read now before we go is a bit in the story where Trixie has assembled her team of tricksters. They were all together. So Ishu, Loki, Maui, Sun Wukong, and Old Coyote. They need to go and get the electricity back, but they don't know how. And they're all bickering amongst themselves. So we find them in a cave, trying to figure out what's the plan that they're going to use to retrieve the electricity. And Monkey's just offered her some food. So she says, "Thanks, Monkey," she replied. "I can't really think on an empty stomach." "Let's hope this helps you with a plan then," said Coyote. "What are we doing?" "Well," grinned Trixie, "I don't see why I have to come up with a plan on my own. That's why I've got you all together. You guys are the cleverest, wiliest goddess of all time. Surely you can come up with something better than what a little girl would." "She's got a point there," said Maui. "We are very clever. Well, I know I am, at least." "They don't call me great sage equal to heaven for nothing," added Monkey. "Who calls you that?" asked Loki. "Everyone," replied Sun Wukong. "I thought everyone called you Monkey," said Coyote. "Great sage equal to blah, blah, blah. It's a stupid nickname. Nicknames should make a name simpler. That has lots of words." "It's not a nickname, it's a honorific, my pointy-eared friend," said Monkey. "Is it Sage the herb, or Sage like a wise dude?" asked Maui. Guys," said Trixie, "I'm not sure this is going to help us find the jar." "I beg to disagree," said the Monkey King. "By establishing who among us is the cleverest, we can choose who should come up with the plan." "No, that's not what I meant at all," sighed Trixie. "What's the point of having all of you here if only one of us comes up with a plan? I think we should work on this together." Mumbled Maui, shuffling his feet. Said Loki. "Mr. Santos, if you don't mind," said Ishu, "I think you find that we're not the most collaborative party." "I don't see why you can't try," the girl said. "I do," said Loki. "In fact, you can watch me not trying very hard as we speak." "Oh, come on," said Trixie. "You're acting like big children." says the child was barely taller than a medium-sized pig, mumbled Maui. I am considerably taller than a medium-sized pig. Thank you, said Trixie. Prometheus, who had been silent since they left the ship, stepped into the middle and raised his hand. Comrades, if you permit me, I think I have a solution to your impasse. Why don't we each think of our ideal plan? Then we can decide which course is the wisest. That's a great idea, exclaimed Trixie. It's a terrible idea, moaned Loki. I don't want to have to hear those Dote's half-baked schemes. Who are you calling Dote, Matchstick Head? Growled Coyote. Trixie could see they were going to kick off again. Great, excellent. That's then decided, she said. Smiled and ushered them away from each other. Let's each think of a plan, meet back here in a bit, and share our ideas with everyone. And that's where I'm going to leave everyone. So thank you very much for coming. It was really lovely to do this. I hope you like the book. I hope you read it. I hope you enjoy it. And, if you ever kind of see me around, say hello.